The blizzard came without warning, trapping Nathan Jackson, a black single dad working as an IT support technician, and Victoria Hargreaves, the notoriously cold CEO, inside a small, isolated bothy deep in the Scottish Highlands. The temperature dropped brutally fast. Their breath turned to thick white mist inside the dim room. When the power died, and the wind howled through every crack in the wooden walls, only one thin, threadbare blanket remained, draped over a dusty wooden chair. Victoria stared at him for a long, silent moment. Then she whispered, her voice trembling just slightly, "Can I slip under your blanket with you?" What did that question truly mean? Early that morning, Nathan had stood quietly in his daughter's bedroom doorway, watching her sleep. Lily's small hand clutched a homemade card, covered in glitter and crooked red hearts. She'd stayed up way past bedtime to finish it, determined that Daddy needed something to remember her by during his 2-day trip up north. "I'll be back before you know it, sweetheart," he'd whispered, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Now, gripping the steering wheel of the company Land Rover, snow hammering the windscreen, Nathan wondered if that was a promise he could actually keep. The day had started in chaos. His line manager had rung at 6:30 in the morning, voice tight with stress. Victoria Hargreaves' private car had broken down. Her driver was off sick with flu. The important tech conference in the Highlands couldn't happen without the CEO. And Nathan was the only IT person traveling up who had proper experience driving in winter weather. "You grew up round Manchester, didn't you?" his manager had asked. "Snowy roads, bad conditions, you can manage it." Nathan hadn't said. He'd left that life behind 15 years ago, or that his experience with mountain roads came from a childhood he preferred to forget. But he needed the job. 3 years of raising Lily on his own had taught him never to say no to overtime, extra call-outs, anything that might lead to a pay rise or a step up. So here he was, acting as chauffeur to the woman the entire company feared. Victoria Hargreaves sat in the back, eyes locked on her laptop screen. She'd spoken barely 10 words to him since they left London, when he'd introduced himself in the underground car park. She'd looked straight through him, as though he were just part of the vehicle. Functional, forgettable, not worth noticing. He understood. To her he was the IT lad who sorted printers and reset passwords. She ran a multi-billion-pound company. Their worlds weren't meant to touch. Nathan glanced in the rearview mirror. Victoria's face glowed pale blue from the screen, features sharp and perfectly composed. She was beautiful in that distant, untouchable way, like a photograph in a Sunday supplement. You admired but never expected to actually meet. The financial pages called her brilliant. The office whispers called her ruthless. Nathan didn't know which version was real. He didn't intend to find out. The snow had begun as light flurries an hour earlier. The forecast had promised clear skies until evening. The Met Office had clearly got it wrong. Now the flurries had become a solid white wall. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The narrow Highland track twisted ahead, slick with black ice. Nathan felt the tires slipping on every bend. "The weather's turning nasty," he said, keeping his tone calm. "We might need to stop and wait it out." Victoria didn't lift her eyes from the screen. "The conference starts in 4 hours. I'm delivering the keynote. Keep going." Nathan tightened his jaw and pressed on. The Land Rover inched along the twisting track, wind battering the windows like fists. His mobile had lost signal 20 minutes ago. The sat-nav had frozen, stuck on a map that no longer existed. He thought of Lily. Probably eating porridge with her nan right now. Chattering about school, her friends. And the glittery card she'd made for Daddy. He'd promised to call her tonight. Promised he'd be home tomorrow afternoon. Her gappy-toothed smile flashed in his mind. The photo in his wallet. Worn soft and rounded at the corners from years of looking. She was the reason he got up every single day. Why he worked every extra hour. Swallowed every bit of pride. And drove intimidating CEOs through blizzards. A sudden, violent gust slammed the vehicle. Nathan felt the rear slide before he could react. He steered into the skid, hands steady. But the ice didn't forgive. The Land Rover spun once, twice. Then crashed sideways into a deep snowbank. The impact jerked them hard against their seatbelts. The engine coughed once. And died. Silence swallowed the car. Broken only by the screaming wind outside. "You all right?" Nathan asked. Twisting round to look at her. Victoria's laptop lay on the floor. Her face was ashen, composure fractured for the first time. She shook her head slowly. One hand pressed to her chest. Nathan turned the key. Nothing. Tried again. The engine spluttered weakly and went quiet. "Stay put," he said. Reaching for his phone. "I'll try to get signal." He stepped out into the storm. The cold struck like a physical blow. Snow swirled and stung his face, numbing his fingers in seconds. He held the phone high, hunting for even one bar. One flickered briefly. He dialed his mother-in-law's number, hard hammering. It rang once, twice, connected. "Hello, Nathan." "Mum, put Lily on quick, please." A rustle, then his daughter's bright, happy voice. "Daddy. Have you reached the mountains? Is there loads of snow?" "Hey, little love." Nathan's throat closed. "Yeah, loads of snow. Listen, I might be a bit late getting home, all right. But I'll be there. I promise." "Okay, Daddy. I miss you already. Are you okay? You sound." The line cut dead. Nathan stared at the blank screen. The word "okay" hanging unfinished in the freezing air. He stood there a long moment. Snow settling thick on his shoulders. Before making himself move. Back inside, Victoria was holding her own phone up to the window. Frustration etched on her face. "No signal," she said. A new edge in her voice. "Fear." "There's a bothy about half a mile back," Nathan said. "I saw it just before we spun. Emergency shelter. We need to reach it before the cold gets any worse." Victoria looked at him. Then at the white nothingness beyond the windows. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Walk in this?" "No choice." The half-mile felt like 10. Nathan broke trail through the deepening snow. Victoria followed. Her designer coat, and completely unsuitable boots. Hopeless against the conditions. Twice she stumbled. Twice he caught her arm, steadying her without comment. She took the help silently. But she never pulled away. The bothy appeared through the blizzard like a shadow. Small, weathered, barely upright. Nathan forced the iced-up door open. Ushered Victoria inside. Then slammed it shut against the roaring wind. Inside was dark and bitterly cold. But at least they were out of the gale. Nathan's eyes adjusted slowly. One room. Broken wood-burning stove. Wobbly table. 2 chairs. One thin wool blanket draped over a chair. No electricity. No heat. No supplies. They'd taken nothing from the car. Victoria stood in the center. Arms wrapped tight around herself. Breath clouding in front of her. The commanding CEO, who terrified boardrooms, had disappeared. In her place stood a woman shivering in a coat that cost more than Nathan earned in a month. Nathan weighed their options. The stove was rusted shut, missing parts. Some dry wood in the corner. But lighting it without a working stove would fill the room with smoke. The blanket, old, thin, barely enough for one person. Never mind two. The cold was already sinking into his bones. "We need to conserve body heat," he said. Voice calm and matter-of-fact. "The only way we survive tonight is by staying close." Victoria's eyes met his. Dark, guarded, suddenly vulnerable. In a way that didn't match anything he knew about her. She was the CEO. He was the IT technician. The distance between them was supposed to be impossible to cross. But the cold didn't care about company structures. Nathan took the blanket from the chair. "We sit together. Share warmth. Basic survival." Victoria hesitated. Pride visibly fighting fear. Then a gust shook the walls. Snow spraying through the cracks. The fight drained out of her. She gave one small, tight nod. They sat on the floor against the far wall. Shoulders touching. The thin blanket stretched across both their laps. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, two strangers from different worlds sat in silence. Their breath mingling in the frozen air. And in that silence, something quiet began to change. The first hour passed in stiff silence. Victoria sat ramrod straight, keeping as much distance as the blanket allowed, while still sharing its meager warmth. Even here, shivering in a broken-down bothy, she held herself like she was still in a boardroom. Shoulders back, chin up, eyes fixed on nothing. Nathan recognized it. He'd seen it before. That desperate need to stay in control. When everything else was collapsing. His late wife had done the same. Refusing to show weakness even when the diagnosis came. He pushed the memory away. Not now. The wind screamed outside, rattling the walls. Snow drifted through every gap, dusting the floor with white that melted slowly. Nathan had done what he could. Stuffing bits of his jacket lining into the worst cracks. Moving them as far from the drafts as possible. It wasn't enough. The cold kept deepening. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. The leather was worn smooth, edges frayed. He opened it to the photo tucked behind his driving license. Lily, grinning at the camera. Gappy-toothed smile. Glitter still caught in her plaits from an art project. The sight steadied him somehow. Reminded him why he had to make it through this night. "Your daughter." Victoria's voice startled him. She was looking at the photo, expression unreadable. Nathan nodded. "Lily. She's 7. She looks happy." "She is." He brushed his thumb gently across the picture. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." Victoria turned her face away. But not before Nathan caught a flicker. Something that looked almost like longing. The CEO mask slipped, just for a second, revealing something raw underneath. They fell quiet again. But the silence felt different now. The wall between them cracked, just a little. Another hour passed. The bothy grew darker, as the storm swallowed the last of the daylight. Soon they sat in near-total blackness. Unable to see each other's faces. Aware of one another only through shoulder warmth. And the sound of breathing. "Do you find this strange?" Victoria's voice came soft and sudden in the dark. "Find what strange?" "This?" Being here with me, like this. Nathan considered it. 24 hours ago. He couldn't have imagined sitting this close to Victoria Hargreaves. She lived in a different universe. Corner offices, private jets, decisions that affected thousands. He lived in server rooms and help desk tickets. No one ever thanked him for. Strange isn't the word I'd use, he said finally. What word would you use? He thought. Unexpected. A small sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, but close. That's very diplomatic. I try. The darkness made talking easier. No faces to remind them who they were supposed to be. Words came more freely. Lily's mum, Victoria said quietly. Is she? She passed 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Nathan stared into the black. He rarely spoke about Sarah. The wound had scarred, but never fully closed. Yet something about this strange, forced closeness made him want to speak. Car accident, he said. She was driving home from her sister's. I was meant to go with her, but Lily had a fever, so I stayed. Sarah said she'd be fine on her own. His voice caught. He forced the rest out. The other driver went through a red light. She died instantly. They told me she didn't suffer. Like that was supposed to make it better. Victoria said nothing. But he felt her shift closer. The slightest increase in pressure where their shoulders met. I blamed myself for a long time, Nathan admitted. Still do, sometimes. If I'd been there, maybe I could have seen the car coming. Maybe I could have done something. You can't think like that. I know. Doesn't stop the thoughts. The wind howled, filling the quiet between them. I don't know what that's like, Victoria said. Her voice smaller than he'd ever heard it. Losing someone you love. I've never had anyone to lose. Nathan turned toward her in the darkness. Even though he couldn't see her. What do you mean? For a long moment she didn't answer. When she spoke, the words came slowly. Pulled from somewhere deep and locked away. People approach me constantly. Investors, executives, men who say they want to know the real me. But they don't. They want access. They want money. They want to say they dated Victoria Hargreaves. Or did business with her. Or knew her. Her voice hardened with old bitterness. No one has ever wanted just me. So I stopped letting anyone get close enough to try. It's easier. Build the walls high enough. And no one can hurt you. But no one can reach you either. Liam spoke softly. No one can. Her breath caught. In the darkness, he heard her swallow hard. No, she whispered. No one can. The confession hung between them. Fragile and honest. Almost sacred. Nathan understood, perhaps for the first time, that the coldness everyone feared in Victoria Hargreaves wasn't strength. It was armor. Forged from loneliness. Worn so long she'd forgotten how to remove it. He wanted to say something that matched the weight of her words. But before he could, she spoke again. Your daughter is lucky to have someone who loves her like that. I'm the lucky one, Nathan said. She saved me after Sarah died. Gave me a reason to keep going. When everything felt pointless. Victoria's hand found his in the darkness. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. But her grip was firm. I think, she said quietly. This is the most honest conversation I've had in years. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. Then maybe getting stuck in this bothy wasn't entirely a bad thing. Another small sound escaped her. Closer to a real laugh this time. Surprised, like she'd forgotten she could make it. They sat like that for a while, hands clasped under the blanket. The storm raging outside, while something quieter and stronger grew between them. The barriers of position and status fell away, leaving only two people sharing warmth and truth in the dark. But as the hours dragged on, the cold became impossible to ignore. Nathan felt it first, a deeper chill settling into his bones. Their shared body heat could no longer hold it back. The temperature was plummeting. Victoria's shivering grew worse. What had been occasional tremors became constant, violent shaking she couldn't control. Her teeth chattered so hard he could hear them clicking. "Victoria," he said, keeping his voice calm. "How do you feel?" "Cold." Her voice came out slurred, each word an effort. "So cold." Nathan's training kicked in. Basic first aid courses he'd done years ago, when Lily was born. When he'd wanted to be ready for anything. He recognized the signs. Uncontrollable shivering. Slurred speech. The distant, confused quality in her voice. Hypothermia. He reached out and touched her face. Her skin felt like ice. Her lips pale even in the darkness. "I need you to listen to me," he said. Voice steady despite the fear twisting inside him. "Your body temperature is dropping too fast. We need to share more heat." Victoria's response was muddled. What do you mean?" "Skin contact. It's the only way to transfer enough warmth." Even through the fog, he felt her stiffen. The meaning of his words cut through. Nathan's own mind raced. This was the CEO of his company. A woman he'd barely spoken to before today. Every instinct screamed to keep distance, to protect himself from any possible accusation. But those instincts didn't matter. If she died. He thought of Lily waiting at home with her nan, clutching her homemade card. His daughter needed him to come back. She needed her dad alive. And right now, Victoria needed him too. "I know this isn't." He struggled for the right words. "I'm not trying to. I just need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Victoria's eyes found his in the darkness. For a moment the confusion cleared, replaced by something raw and frightened. Not of him, but of her own vulnerability. Then she moved closer, her body pressing against his, her voice barely a whisper. "Nathan, can I slip under your blanket with you?" The question from the beginning, now heavy with context, desperation, and the weight of everything they'd shared. Not seduction, survival, not desire, necessity, but also something more. Something neither could name. Nathan looked at Lily's photo one last time, her smiling face barely visible in the dark. Then he looked at Victoria. This woman who commanded empires, but couldn't command the cold. Who built walls around her heart, but couldn't build walls against the storm. He lifted the blanket. "Come here." Victoria pressed against him, her freezing body seeking his warmth, her face buried against his chest. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, pulling the blanket tight over both of them, trying to create a small cocoon of shared heat. She trembled violently, fingers clutching his shirt like a lifeline. He held her tighter, rubbing her arms, her back, trying to create friction, warmth. "Stay with me," he murmured into her hair. "Just stay with me." Outside, the blizzard reached its peak. Wind screaming like something alive and hungry. Inside, two strangers clung to each other in the darkness, every boundary between them dissolving with each shared heartbeat. And somewhere in that long, cold night, as Victoria's shivering slowly eased, and her breathing steadied against his chest, Nathan realized the distance between their worlds had never been as vast as he'd believed. It had only ever been as wide as the space between two reaching hands. The night stretched on, endless and dark. Victoria's breathing eventually steadied against Nathan's chest, her violent trembling fading to occasional shivers. He held her through it all, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, the other keeping the blanket tucked tight. Somewhere in those long hours, she began to talk. Not guarded and measured like before, but broken and raw, pulled from places she'd kept locked for years. She told him about parents who measured love in achievements, about learning young that vulnerability was weakness, and weakness was unacceptable, about climbing to the top of a company, only to find the view from the top lonelier than she'd ever imagined. I can't remember the last time someone touched me without wanting something, she whispered against his shirt. Even this feels like a dream. Like I'll wake up and be alone again. Nathan listened. He offered no advice, no platitudes. He simply held her and let her speak. The way he held Lily when nightmares woke her, crying for a mum who would never come. At some point, the quality of her trembling changed. She lifted her face from his chest, looking up at him in the darkness. They were close enough that he felt her breath on his lips, close enough to sense the question in her eyes. The moment hung, electric with possibility. Nathan wanted to close the distance. Part of him wanted it more than he'd wanted anything in years. But he thought of Lily's smiling face, of the promise he'd made to always come home. He thought of Sarah, of the life they'd built before tragedy tore it apart. And he thought of Victoria. Not the CEO, but the woman shivering in his arms. A woman so desperate for connection. She might reach for it in a moment of weakness, only to regret it when the sun rose. He wouldn't be that regret. You need to rest, he said softly, and gently guided her head back to his chest. Victoria didn't protest. A small sound escaped her. Relief or disappointment, he couldn't tell. Then she relaxed against him, fingers curling into his shirt. Thank you, she breathed. Nathan didn't ask what she was thanking him for. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. They slept in fragments, drifting in and out as the storm howled outside. Each time Nathan woke, he checked her breathing, felt her forehead, made sure she was still warm. Each time she nestled closer, seeking him even in sleep. When pale grey light finally crept through the bothy's frosted window, the storm had passed. Nathan woke to real silence. No more screaming wind. He blinked at the weak dawn filtering through the dirty glass. For a moment he was disoriented. Then he felt the weight against his chest. And everything came rushing back. Victoria stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Confusion gave way to awareness. Then to something else entirely. In the space of 3 heartbeats, Nathan watched the woman from last night vanish, replaced by someone harder, more familiar. She pulled away so fast she nearly fell, scrambling to put distance between them. Her hands flew to her hair, smoothing her clothes, as if she could erase every trace of the night. The storm stopped, she said, voice crisp and professional again. All warmth stripped away. We should signal for help. Nathan sat up slowly, the cold hitting him hard now that her warmth was gone. He watched her move to the window. Back rigid, shoulders squared. The CEO was back. rebuilding her walls at speed. Victoria, what happened last night? She cut him off without turning. Was a survival situation. Nothing more. The words landed harder than the cold ever had. I hope you understand that when we get back to the company, this doesn't need to be discussed with anyone. Nathan's jaw tightened. He thought of the conversations they'd shared. The secrets she'd trusted him with. The way she'd clung to him. Like he was the only solid thing in a world gone dark and cold. Had any of it been real? Or had he just been a warm body? Useful in a crisis. Forgettable once morning came. I understand, he said quietly. He stood and began gathering what little they had. His jacket, his wallet. Lily's photo had slipped out during the night. He picked it up from the dusty floor, brushing it off carefully. Behind him, he heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath. When he turned, she was staring at the photo in his hands. At Lily's gappy-toothed smile. At the glitter still visible in her little plaits. Something cracked in her expression. Nathan tucked the photo back into his wallet and moved toward the door. Every step felt heavy. He'd been foolish to think last night had meant anything. To her, he was still just the IT guy who fixed printers and drove her through snowstorms. Functional, forgettable, beneath notice. Nathan. Wait. Her voice stopped him at the door. He didn't turn. Couldn't. If he looked at her now. Walls back up, armor firmly in place. He wasn't sure he could hide the hurt. I'm sorry. The words came out broken. Nothing like the polished speech of a CEO. When he finally turned, Victoria stood in the middle of the bothy. Arms wrapped around herself. Looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Any of this. Being open. Being real with someone. She took a shaky breath. Last night you saw parts of me no one has ever seen. And instead of using them against me, you just held me. You kept me warm. You asked for nothing. Her eyes glistened in the pale morning light. That terrifies me more than the cold ever did. Nathan felt something loosen in his chest. He moved toward her slowly, giving her space to retreat if she needed it. She didn't. I don't need you to be the CEO, he said. I don't care about your company. Your money. Your position. Last night I saw a woman who was scared and alone. And I wanted to help her. He stopped an arm's length away. That's all. That's everything. Victoria's composure finally broke. Not dramatically, no tears, no sobs. Just a quiet crumbling of the mask she'd spent her whole life building. She looked at him with eyes full of fear and hope in equal measure. How do you do it? She whispered. Raise a daughter alone. Work the jobs no one notices. Carry all that weight. And still be kind. Nathan thought about Lily's laughter. About Sarah's memory. About all the small moments of grace that made the hard days bearable. I don't have a choice, he said simply. Lily needs me to be the best version of myself. So that's who I try to be. Victoria nodded slowly, understanding something he hadn't quite said aloud. That strength wasn't about building walls. It was about staying soft enough to love. Even when love meant risking everything. The distant thump of helicopter blades broke the moment. Search and rescue, finally coming. Victoria looked toward the window. Then back at Nathan. Whatever decision she'd been wrestling with, she made it quickly. When we get back, she said. Voice unsteady but determined. Can I meet her? Lily? The question caught him completely off guard. Of all the things he'd expected, this wasn't one. You want to meet my daughter? Victoria's smile was small and uncertain. Nothing like the confident one she wore in boardrooms. This smile was real. You said she likes strong people. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. I'd like to learn how to be one. The kind she'd admire. Nathan felt warmth spread through his chest. Not the survival warmth of the night before, but something deeper. Something that felt like the beginning of a story. Not the end. She'd like you, he said. She's got good instincts about people. I'm not as strong as you think I am. Nathan reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were still cold, but her grip was firm. No one has to be strong alone. The helicopter grew louder, circling somewhere above the trees. In a few minutes they'd be rescued. They'd return to their separate worlds. The CEO and the IT technician. The boardroom and the basement. But as they stepped out of the bothy together, Victoria's hand still clasped in his. Nathan knew some distances could never be measured in job titles or bank balances. Some distances were only as wide as the space between two people, willing to reach for each other. The morning sun broke through the clouds, turning the snow to diamonds beneath their feet. Ahead, the rescue helicopter descended toward a clearing. Behind them, the bothy stood silent, keeper of secrets shared in the dark. And between them walked a promise. Unspoken, but understood. That whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone.